Our story begins in February 2001. A single bizarre post appeared on 2Channel. It simply said, "Something weird happened on the bus I always take to school." The student wrote, "I always take the bus to school, but one day something really strange happened. Like always, the bus turned right. The usual old lady was on board, so I stayed on until the end. It hurt, so at this point his writing was completely broken, but he kept going. Staying until the end was fine, but inside the bus there were these big paper bags that didn't feel like paper, along with ball-like things. And there were a bunch of people wearing silk hats. The bus turned a corner and suddenly slammed on the brakes. Passengers almost fell over. I was sitting, so I was fine. And then things got really weird. Normally the bus goes past a big park, but that day there was construction, so it took a detour through a tunnel. Right as it reached the middle of the tunnel, the bus jerked to a violent stop. The student thought it was odd, but the next thing he knew, he was already at the school bus stop. Confused, he just went to class as usual. Then, at the very end, he dropped this bomb. "By the way, everyone who was on that bus is already dead." And that was it. The thread ended. People felt uneasy, but weird posts are a daily thing on 2Channel, so it was quickly forgotten. 2 years later, in 2003, I heard this from my friend. He commuted to high school in Kanagawa by bus. There was one old lady who always rode the same route. She looked normal, but she gave off this indescribable, eerie vibe, like she wasn't from this world. One winter morning, the old lady got on as usual. There was a refined elderly gentleman wearing a silk hat already on the bus, and behind him stood 2 men carrying large bags. The friend couldn't catch what they were saying, but they seemed to be talking. Then suddenly the old gentleman raised his voice and shouted, "I won't allow that!" Everyone turned to look. One of the men reached into a large bag and pulled out a round, ball-like object. The atmosphere froze. The old lady and the gentleman just glared at each other. Then, without warning, the bus slammed on the brakes. The driver announced they had to take a detour because of emergency roadwork. The bus turned onto an unfamiliar road. Soon everything outside went dark. Just as my friend thought, we're in a tunnel. His memory cut off completely. When he woke up, he was in a hospital bed. He had been found collapsed on the roadside. But here's the scary part. There was no record of any other passengers being admitted. No news about an accident. Nothing. He eventually regained consciousness, but he was left with brain damage. Still, he desperately tried to figure out what happened. The poster had spent 2 whole days pulling the story out of him. Day by day, his friend got worse, and he passed away the summer before. Old lady, silk hats, round objects, tunnel, bus accident. It all matched the 2001 post far too perfectly. Users started digging and found the original messy thread. The thread exploded. "This lines up way too well. What the hell did he see? If this is real, it's the same guy. I'm getting major chills." Everything clicked. After that, the discussion just died out. The story was left unresolved. No big twist, no clear ending. Just this deeply unsettling feeling that something impossible happened inside that tunnel. A bus that arrived at school right on time, while everyone who had been riding it was already dead. So, what do you think really happened? I'll leave it up to you. Stay safe.